While building this SaaS application, I recently lost several hours debugging three Laravel relationship issues. What's interesting is that none of them were caused by missing foreign keys, none were caused by database problems, and none required complicated fixes. In every case, the relationship already existed. The real problem was how I was thinking about the relationships. Today, I want to walk through the three mistakes, show the actual bug, explain how I fixed it, and share the architectural lesson each taught me. Because these are the kinds of issues that become more common as SaaS application grows. Bug 1. Fighting Eloquence conventions. So early in the project, I had two models having the same relationship called workspace. I had project having a relationship called workspace, and I had team having a relationship called workspace. So I thought Laravel will get confused that I have two models and I'm using the same relationship name called workspace, and I wanted to become more explicit about this. So I decided to rename the relationship in the project model to project underscore workspace so that it will be different from that in the team. So on naming it this way, I needed the workspace name here in this index view for my projects, and I also needed it here in the show page. So from here, I go to projects. This should load up the index view for all of my projects. Call to undefined relationship workspace or model our models project. Well, this is Eloquent trying to tell me that the relationship it is expecting here in the project model is workspace, not project underscore workspace. Because when naming relationships here, it's kind of like you're telling a story. A project belongs to a workspace, not that a project belongs to a project workspace. The way it reads, it doesn't really align with the business model, how Eloquent requires its relationships to be. So even renaming it in every place to project underscore workspace, you'll still give you the same error because it is expecting workspace, not project workspace, because that's not the naming convention for it. And eventually in the project, I found myself reaching for project workspace rather than project underscore workspace. So cleaning this up, I'll have workspace and taking this off, taking out the comments, taking out the comments, and we should have the error fixed. There we go. And now I can access my show projects dashboard. So Laravel was never actually confused. I was the one confused. So relationships are scoped to the model and they are notified on it. Laravel can easily distinguish between the relationship of team workspace and project workspace. So framework conventions exist to reduce cognitive load. When we fight conventions without a strong reason, we often create more complexity than we remove. Okay, bug 2, traversing the relationship graph incorrectly. Well, the bug happened when I tried to see the show page of a task. I needed to get the workspace name so I can display it. So what I did here was, instead of calling the relationship between task and project, which is called project, I rather called the relationship between workspace and project, which is projects. Okay, I want to reach the workspace, and to get to the workspace, I need to get through the projects. So I called the projects relationship on the task relationship, thinking that that will be the direct link to it. Whereas in the task model, I have a relationship where the task belongs to a single project. Because if you have a many to many, Eloquent will expect you to have a plural here. You have projects like we have in the workspace. This is a many to many, meaning there are many projects under this model. So I had this and I chose to use something else. I chose to use projects. So this is the reverse call of the relationship, using the task to call the project. Then the project will call the workspace, and then I get the name of the workspace there. Using this, I should have an error. Go to task and try to view any task. Okay, you have an error. Attempt to read property workspace on null. Well, this returns null because actually there is no projects. We only have project, we don't have projects. So the relationship that is being called here does not exist. So Eloquent resolves it as null. It's not there. So it returns null rather than what I expected. So we need to change the relationship call to call project and not projects. We are not calling the relationship in the workspace. If we wanted this relationship here, projects, we will need to use a project object to make the call because it is a project that is related to a workspace using this relationship. So we'll get back to our show task and we correct it to project, 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 and then return to the view. And the error is solved. And this error took me so long to spot because everything looked valid. The models existed, the relationships existed, the data existed. So naturally, I started suspecting Laravel was doing something else to not make these relationship calls. Then the database, then eager loading, then I checked the policies, then caching. The relationship graph itself wasn't broken. My path through it was the problem. So to fix this, I need workspace data and started thinking which model owns the relationship I'm trying to access. Once I traced down ownership correctly, the issue became obvious. So the architectural lesson here is that many relationship bugs are traversal mistakes, not relationship mistakes. Before changing a relationship definition, check and verify if you are moving through the domain model correctly. As in my case, I wasn't. And bug 3, fighting the domain language. This one, this error was particularly frustrating because everything here was perfect. Nothing here was actually wrong. Here I had, here I was creating a task. Every time I create a task and then I assign this task, here are users. I assign it to a user, give it everything, create the task. The task will come here unassigned. Actually, this is not unassigned. If you check the database, we have, these are the users here, and they have the task, the title, everything. But here in the UI, it is showing that it is unassigned, even though the task was actually assigned. And once again, another error pops up because I was trying to be more explicit. So if we get into the components where I define this, so here in the task model, here's the relationship assigned user. You check the show project, you check the create task component. I have it here, assigned user, where I get all the users. Here again, I still get the assigned users. I still call the right relationship. And I named it this way, assigned user, because I thought it's a bit more descriptive and it gives more context to the domain, but it wasn't. So to fix this error, what I had to do was use what is more conventional to use. If you have a task, you assign a task, you are giving it to an assignee, just like how we say it normally in English. Task as you have a task assigner and you have the one receiving it as an assignee. So correcting this to assignee will take off the error. Okay, so I did the cleaning up of everything to have assignee as the relationship name, not assigned user. And let's try again to see what happens on the UI. Get the refresh. Okay, there's still one more view with an error, and that should be the, I think that's the show project. Oh no, it's the create task. Alright, right here where we load the task projects. I think that's the final one. Refresh, and right, here we go. Error has been corrected. Now we see the assignees actually have names. So the lesson here is your model should speak the language of your business domain. A task doesn't have an assigned user. A task has an assignee. The role is often more important than the implementation detail. Looking back, none of these bugs were really relationship bugs. They were communication bugs. In bug 1, I didn't trust Laravel's conventions. In bug 2, I didn't trust the relationship graph. And in bug 3, I didn't trust the domain language. The framework already knew what it was doing. The domain model already knew what it was doing. But I was one who kept on adding complexity where clarity already existed. So as applications grow, relationships become part of the architecture. And the more predictable the architecture becomes, the easier the system becomes to understand, debug, and maintain. These bugs reminded me of something important. Laravel relationships are not just database connections, they are part of the language your application uses to describe the business. When a language is inconsistent, debugging becomes harder than it needs to be. When a language is clear and predictable, the codebase becomes dramatically easier to navigate. I'd be interested to know the most time you've lost debugging a relationship issue that turned out to be something surprisingly simple, just like the ones I've faced, or even more complex.